How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting, and welcome back to specifically chaosheadnoah with the patch. So, last time we were here, we had an interesting introduction to our main character, who lives in a cargo container on the top of a building in Shibuya, I believe. It's a little fuzzy, unfortunately. I missed a couple weeks. Well, a week, I guess, technically, with this one coming out. I got bronchitis. Really, really sick, but I'm back, baby. So, some details might be a bit fuzzy, but it was right at the beginning, so I'm not too concerned about that at the minute. The biggest thing I want to kind of reiterate from the first episode was the fact that he's super cringy, absolutely, and I know that's a problem for a lot of people, but for me, the issue is kind of cushioned by this idea that, like, okay, if we accept that the feeling that he gets of being watched, which is something that we all have experienced at one point or another, that feeling of like I feel like someone's watching me or something's like looking at me, if that was consistent and it like fluctuated, but it was like persistent throughout your day, and you couldn't prove it wasn't real, but you also were like always experiencing it, it would make me really, really antisocial, I think. Like, I could see myself becoming very, like, closeted, very, perpetually online, because anytime you're out in public, anytime you're out in, like, society or socializing or anywhere where any other people are, it's just going to make that paranoia and that anxiety so much worse than it is normally, because then you feel like there are people all around you, you can't find the person that's watching you, rather than when you're alone, because when he's alone, he can kind of persuade himself that he's just imagining it because he's clearly alone. So he feels safer there. So that's kind of like my reasoning for why he behaves the way he does. Doesn't justify some of his really creepy nature, and his online friends aren't great either, but we'll get to that. That's the other thing too. Lots of very strong imagery, kind of tapping into some of like the horrors that were for like the first generations to discover the internet, which is something I kind of missed. I was really young when like a lot of this was really picking up, and even when I got old enough to be able to interact online, I was in a home that was heavily restricted. Like, I didn't have access to a PC casually until I was in college. It's not like my parents were super strict or anything. My dad was just really protective, and a lot of it had to do with his job. He couldn't afford to have his computer get compromised, and so we just couldn't surf the internet. And he also didn't like video games on the computer, so he got us like an Xbox. But that was my life. So a lot of the lingo and the stuff is like stuff I've learned like later, but not anymore. Anyway, blah blah blah, blabbing all along, way too long. All right, let's go. Time to go to school. On top of everything else that happened, I'd also had to go to school today. I seriously didn't want to go, but if I didn't follow the minimum attendance sheet to a T, my calculations would get completely thrown off. Worst case scenario, I'd have to even repeat the year. The big problem with his sheet is he's like kind of it's almost like he's counting on the fact that he's never going to get sick, which is always risky. I stifled a yawn and started trudging off towards school, a trip that was about 10 minutes from my base on foot. So your first home is his base, which, granted, it is more like a bunker, so I kind of get it. Man, though, 10 minutes from school. I rode my bike to school, like, in high school, like, almost every day, unless it was, like, dead winter, just because ice and bikes don't mix very well. But even then, on a bicycle, it was, like, a 30, 40-minute ride. Imagine walking 10 minutes to get to your school. As soon as I started walking, my mood sank even lower. My body grew heavy, and I found it strangely hard to breathe, causing me to break into an uncomfortable sweat. This was what almost always happened at school days. Going to school was pure suffering. Why did I have to go through this? Grumbling to myself with my eyes fixed on the pavement, I kept walking. Ooh, a shrine. I turned to enter Shoto Park. The school was just past it. Over by the lake, an elderly couple was taking their morning stroll. Nearby, a businessman sat on the bench reading a sports section of the newspaper. For a park on the outskirts of the bustling city like Shibuya, it was surprisingly calm. Definitely a great place to relax. I took a seat on another bench nearby before heading into the school of the morning. I always came here to eat breakfast. Wait, let me see. Okay. Like, I have a feeling I'm going to, want to, I love dropping the text for specific, scenes. But it's different. And I couldn't remember if it was spacebar or not, so it's always good to test. It's not, it's backspace. I gazed out toward the peaceful pond, the water surrounded by trees with off-color leaves, their hues slowly changing as autumn rolled in.
Fall's the best season. It's been so beautiful lately. I'm sad because it's almost over, like the height of the leaf changing at where I live. I guess it's probably going to be happening for the next several weeks, but it's like on the decline now, and that's always sad. As per usual, today's menu was just a cream bun I picked up from the convenience store on the way here. It'd be enough to tide me over until later tonight. You cannot be healthy eating like that. I always skipped lunch. Nobody wanted to eat lunch with an otaku freak like me, and there was no way in hell I'd eat alone when surrounded by people eating and chatting together. That is rough. Also, though, like, look at the way he self-deprecates. Like, he thinks of himself really high and mighty, but he also understands, like, intrinsically that he also is simultaneously kind of a loser. I feel like it's decent self-awareness, where he isn't high in his own copium too badly, but at the same time, it's still very, like, it's sad because it sucks when you feel like that. When you, like, recognize you're an outsider, it's good because it's not bad being different. But it sucks when you use it as a self-weapon, like a self-harm weapon to kind of, like, excuse your attitudes or your lack of friends or whatever. After washing down my breakfast with some cola, I began staring up at the sky absent-mindedly. No matter the season, the sky above Shibuya was always pretty bleak. My parents only lived a few train stations away, but they were still a clear difference between here and there. Don't get me wrong, I didn't especially mind the bleak sky, but I also couldn't really explain why. I glanced at my watch to check the time. I needed to get going or I'd be late. I had to avoid that outcome at all costs. I only came to school 2 or 3 times a week, so I had to keep a low profile. To make it through school, I had to blend in, to become invisible, like the air. The ideal school day was one where nothing happened. One where I didn't have to deal with any of my teachers or DQN classmates. That was the ultimate goal I shot for, and it would continue to be until the day I'd finally graduate. And then what's your plan? There's the school. The outfits look nice. This was Suimei Private Academy, the school I went to. Suimei. I guess that's Suimei. Suimei. Apparently, it had only been built around 10 years ago, so it didn't exactly have a rich history or anything like that. Since it still looked brand new, it made a pretty good setting for high school TV shows. On top of that, the school's uniforms apparently had been designed by some famous designer. A ton of shallow girls enrolled just so they could wear it. And while they called it a prep school, most students here didn't score much higher than the national average. Even more ironic, though, with the school's slogan was, "Here you'll be free," and yet the school's rules were actually really strict. And then again, they never actually bothered enforcing those rules. So I guess the slogan wasn't really wrong in the end. And when schools are like that, like usually what it is that they have the rules to look proper and to be selectively enforced, which is really kind of crappy. But the idea being that, like, if they see someone who's being a troublemaker, they can nitpick the rules and use them as flags and reasons to get them into trouble, even if they're not enforcing it unilaterally. I mean, I barely ever showed up, and I passed my classes just fine. If you could get away with that, you could probably get away with anything. As I closed in on the school, I could hear the other students more and more clearly. I wasn't good at dealing with crowds, so I just kept my head low as I slipped through the gate. Looks nice, pretty standard. I feel like it feels like schools in Japan are almost carbon copies of each other. Now, that could just be their display in media, but I feel like it's so repetitive, it can't be coincidence. It just must be the way schools are supposed to look. But it's so interesting to me because, like, schools I visit have either worked in, attended, or just happened to, like, pass through for whatever reason. They all look so different. Nobody talk to me. Nobody talk to me. I repeat those words in my head like a mantra. My younger sister also attended this school, though she still lived with my parents. Run into her, and any perfectly fine day could turn to a nightmare. Now I want to meet her. I want to know what she's like. Compared to him. Okay. I mean, we're getting, like, clear and clear, like, caricatures in the background, but again, this also could be reflective. Like, apparently, I feel like there's an anime of this. I don't think... I've heard a lot of people say it wasn't great, but I'm like, are these stills used from the anime? or like pseudo from the anime, or is it just the visual novel came with like decent like because a lot of times in visual novels the backgrounds are just empty classrooms that you're like imposing this idea that it's full of people, but here it looks like they've actually like kind of designed characters. Luckily I hadn't run into her this time. I made it to class safe and sound. I rushed over to my seat, being extra careful not to make eye contact with anyone. I could feel a nearby group of girls shoot a glance at me, but thankfully they went right back to chatting afterward. They all thought I was a freak. I was sure of it. Well, maybe. I mean, you're definitely going to be giving off vibes, but your vibes are don't talk to me, and that's a little weird. But I don't know if it's necessarily making you a freak. It just means that they don't know how to treat you, and so they don't treat you, they treat you differently. Well, from my point of view, you 3D sluts are the real freaks here. Okay, I'm trying to sympathize with you, man, but come on. It's like, he understands. He's got a decent self-awareness, but then like his internet warrior, keyboard warrior slips out right here. If you think I'm a freak, then don't look at me. Just pretend like I'm not here. Don't acknowledge me at all. If you all just do that, then I won't bother you either, and I can go about my day in peace. That's why it always confuses me when I see DQNs calling people freaks. I just don't get it. If you think they're such a freak, then why even bother talking to them? Just stay in your corner and they'll stay in theirs. Regardless, I was just sitting there, looking down at my desk when... Uh-oh.
Yo, Taku.
Taku. Someone suddenly clapped me on the back. Startled, I turned to look behind me.
お前、今日って学校来る日だっけ?
Who are you? Suime. And look at that, like I'm captivated by the symbol of the school. It's like, is it supposed to be a flower? Because it's interesting that they would color its petals such a light, like almost like a shade of green. Suime. Interesting. Who are you, bud?
Misumi-kun.
Misumi. It was Misumi Daisuke, one of my classmates. He shot me a friendly smile from beside my desk. The guy was pretty handsome, and all the girls were into him, but he was also into them and dated them. A lot of them. Usually multiple at a time. If you ask me, he's balls deep into DQN territory. If it were up to me, I'd steer clear of him, but...
相変わらず暗い顔してんな。ゲームのやりすぎで寝不足か?
He knows. He knows! Yeah, look at that though. He's got like very smooth lips.
別に。
He was the only person in the class who was comfortable talking to me. Though we had absolutely nothing in common, so I have no idea why he bothered. I'd been suspicious about it ever since the school year began. If I were a girl, I could maybe understand, but since I was a guy, it made no sense to me.
引きこもりだからしゃあねえかもしんねえけどよ。もっとこう、ハキハキ答えろって。
Huh. I would if I could. Just the act of talking to another 3D human being was painful. Anxiety made it harder for me to speak naturally, so my lack of experience made it hard for me to articulate things. And I was always afraid of being teased for saying something weird. That was why I always shrunk back. That's the double-edged sword, though, of that, is the fact that because he's nervous that he's going to mess up, he avoids it, thus he never doesn't practice, so he's more likely to mess up, which means that he's more likely to feel nervous about it, and it becomes a cycle. You kind of just got to force your way out of it. You have no idea how much pain I'm going through, so please don't talk like you know me. Also, I'm not a gosh darn shut-in. Real shut-ins stay in their rooms 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I'm not like that.
女相手に緊張するならともかく、そういう態度されると、俺らホモと思われるじゃねえか。
Okay, first of all, why is that a bad thing? Second of all, that's a weird way to try and motivate someone. Wait, was he just dating girls as a cover? Had he been into guys all along? I tried to back away from him, nearly falling out of my chair in the process, but I quickly grabbed onto my desk to catch myself.
何してんだお前。
Yeah. What's up, man?
ミスミ君はホモなの？なわけねえだろ。お前、俺の女好きを忘れたのか？
Hang on, I'm just noticing something. Music is a little loud. I might try and fix that real quick. I tried turning it down. That's a bit better. Okay, so he said the phrase here. You gonna play it for me? Oh well.
だよね。ビビった。
I kind of like forgot because of the voice, but I like was it like the phrase for gay like homo des? Like is it just homo? Huh.
ちなみに
Oh, I don't like that smile. Misumi-kun took a quick look around, then lowered his voice and grinned from ear to ear.
昨日このクラスの女子で3人目を落とした誰だか聞きたいか
Oh my gosh, this dude. Okay, you know what? I understand that you see the main character's creepy. I think he's creepier, honestly.
いいよ、別に。
だよもっと興味示せよ田中だぜ田中
Tanaka.
田中って誰？
お前もうすぐ10月だってのに未だに同じクラスのやつの顔を覚えてねえのか
Well, to be fair, he doesn't attend often, and I barely know people's names in my classes. That's just me, though. I'm terrible at remembering names. I'll remember faces. Like, I'll be like, oh yeah, I recognize you. But most of the time, I won't remember your name.
ま3次元に興味ないんじゃそれも当然か
Visibly frustrated, he shrugged his shoulders and let out a sigh. Well, interestingly enough, he never insulted my taste in girls, which was, to put it simply, that they had to be from the second dimension. But he'd never called me a freak for that. He just didn't bother with things that didn't interest him. That was what made me think he may not have been all that bad. That was also probably the reason why I didn't mind talking to him. So it's interesting though. So if he doesn't care about stuff he's not interested in, why is he so interested in you?
これでうちのクラスの可愛い女はほぼ攻略完了だ
Uh-huh.
そろそろ隣のクラスにも守備範囲広げようかって思ってんだよ
Oh my gosh. Okay, maybe he was pretty bad. If a girl overheard some of the crap he said, she'd be horrified.
D 組によめったに学校来ねえけどすごくいい女がいるらしいんだよ
Hmm.
なんかそういうの燃えねえか
Oh, I see. I see where you put your stocks.
あお前の場合は燃えるんじゃなくて燃えだっけか
I think he means like the 2D flat girls. Are you talking about 2D? That's not... Whatever.
まお前の興味ねえ話はそろそろやめるか
But all sizes are beautiful. Just an FYI.
じゃあよニュージェネの話知ってるだろ
Oh boy. I hadn't expected to hear those words come out of his mouth. And here I thought he was only capable of thinking about girls. I couldn't even picture him watching news or reading the newspaper.
集団ダイブの事件さあれも噂によると殺人らしいぜ
Alright.
へえ。
マジだって書いてあったんだよスポ島に
Wow, so they're talking about it on the sports channel. That's significant. What's his, what? So his source was Sports Tokyo? That's kind of erases all of any and all credibility. I mean, is it though? Is it just source? Like, yeah, it's just a source of information. Why am I looking at that? I was just curious why I was highlighting it because it felt like so simple. Still, I'd already known about that rumor, not that I cared.
で聞いて驚けその殺人鬼が女でしかもかなり美人だって目撃証言があんだよ
So an eyewitness saw someone push a whole group of people off of a rooftop? Okay, first of all, how would someone accomplish that? And second of all, why? Like, that's really weird.
女。
Watching Misumi-kun get so excited, it finally hit me. Why did he suddenly care enough to read Sports Tokyo? Same reason he cared about anything else. Something to do with girls. What a twist. I guess Misumi-kun would even go after serial killers as long as they were cute. He's one of them. He wants the oh my gosh, I should know this one. Oh my gosh. What is wrong with me? I know the term. Yandere. Yeah, that's it. Yandere. Gosh darn it. I kept thinking Tsundere. And I'm like, it's not Tsundere. I mean, if it were me, I'd take the cute 2D serial killer, but Musume-kun stared longingly at the blue sky outside the window. Then, for some reason, his face suddenly lit up as if he'd reached enlightenment itself.
どんなやつなんだろうな、犯人って。本当に美人なのかな。会ってみてー。
Alright, dude. Calm yourself. Yeah, this dude definitely thought exclusively with the wrong head.
俺だけは殺されねえ自信があるんだよ
That's pretty good.
な。だってほら、俺ってかっこいいだろ。いくら連続殺人鬼でも、俺みたいないい男に会ったら、コロッと惚れちゃうぜ。
Sure, nice guy. But also, I don't know, dude. I feel like someone who's like a serial womanizer is exactly the kind of person that a psychotic person might decide to kill. And that's why she wouldn't kill you. This guy is so delusional, he gave me a run for my money. The fact that he was able to say all that without even a hint of irony was honestly pretty gross.
僕は興味ないから。
でもよ、興味ないっつったって、犯人は絶対この辺うろうろしてんだぞ。どっかですれ違ってたりするかもしんねえし。
Oh boy. Yeah, well, for all I know, you could be the murderer. Okay, probably not, but it was entirely possible that the killer could be one of the students at this very school. If that turned out to be true, maybe I'd use my PTSD as an excuse to come less often without hurting my attendance. Is he, if it's literally like he's trying to use post-traumatic stress disorder? Like, does he actually have it, or is he just using it in the casual conversational way? Because that's gross.
なあ、今日俺と一緒に殺人現場見に行かね。ここから歩いて行けんだってよ。まだ血とか残ってるらしいぞ。
Oh my gosh, dude. I had absolutely zero interest in doing that. I just wanted to get through school in peace, go home, greet Sarah-san, and get back to being worshipped like a god in Blacelard.
もう小橋と長谷川は見に行ったって言ってたしよ。
本当に興味ないんだ。
Oh. What is this? What is happening? I felt bad about turning Musume-kun down since he seemed so excited about it, but I really did not want to go. But even though I was trying my hardest to refuse, he just wasn't listening.
そしたら犯人とばったり会っちゃったりしてな。犯人は犯行現場に戻ってくるってよく言うだろ。
That's so weird to think though, because why? I feel like if I committed a murder, the last place I'd want to be was anywhere nearby it.
で、次はタクがターゲットにされるんだ。死をもって罪を償え。みたいな。罪状はそうだな。引きこもってたからってことで。
Yeah, because that's totally a crime. So, am I in a choice moment here? Like I can do yes or no? And then if it is, maybe it's a timed one, which is like why it's letting me click through. Kind of like Steins Gate, where so I have a choice here, but if I don't make a choice within like a certain amount of like dialogue, it'll be made for me. I wonder if that is the case. I'm gonna do a quick save, but I'm going to see. All right, so here I am, shut in. Not really interested. Struggles to say yes or no. Yes, I'll go. No, I don't want to go. I kind of don't think I'd want to go to a murder scene. I think if I click through, it's going to force me to do yes. And I wonder if it's going to change the outcome of the story right away, or if this is mostly just kind of giving me an insight into kind of what happens. I don't know. Like, I'm worried I'm going to derail things right off the bat because I'm curious how this is going to play out, but I kind of want to click this. That's not what I expected. What is this? I feel like I should have been obvious to him how much I didn't want to go and see a puddle of blood and gore. Would have been way too much for me. I wouldn't be like Haunted House or a horror movie or something. People had actually died IRL and the killer was still on the loose. So whatever the murderer was likely to be, I'd have liked to be anywhere but there. Still, I was curious about the murderer. What could have possibly been their motive? Were they just a psychopath that committed crimes for the heck of it? Well, that's probably the most reasonable explanation. Well, whatever. Didn't really matter to me. I mean, I was a serial killer too, and even though I'd killed hundreds, people still treated me like a hero. That wasn't ESO though, lol. Oh, so maybe that's like the delusional side of yourself or like the reasonable side of yourself. So I just went full keyboard warrior there. Just goes to show how much better 2D World is. Anyway, as I tried my hardest to turn down Misumi-kun's proposal, I imagined myself like a brawler straight out of some fighting game. A psycho killer? If I ran into a guy like that, I'd turn him into mincemeat. In my delusions, I could kill or spare anyone I wanted. But the people who actually tried to live out those stories of delusions were idiots. Didn't they know the real-life actions had real-life consequences? Even the NewGen killer would get caught eventually, and then they'd rot in prison for years, decades even, just waiting to be sent to the gallows. If I could say one thing to them, it'd be, what a pity. You really should have just kept your delusions to yourself. Alright, so did I break the game or what? Oh no. That's not good. What the fish? Who did that? It's a cat! Oh no. I went out to buy myself some dinner. I took the road I always used to get to my local convenience store. It was only a 3-minute walk from my base. I'd walked down this dirty alleyway more times than I could count. But for some reason, walking through it today, I couldn't help but feel as if I'd stepped into another world. The alley was the same as ever, but it felt like it was the first time I'd ever set foot in it. What's more, the stench of rotting garbage was lingering in the air. The moisture in the atmosphere was so thick that if I hadn't known any better, I'd have assumed it'd just been raining. The air was like syrup on my skin. That's when I noticed it. There was something on the ground at the far end of the alley.
Huh?
At first glance, I thought it was a garbage bag from the convenience store, so I kept walking without paying it any mind. But once I'd gotten a bit closer... not a kitty. Realized it was what it was, a dead cat. Blood and feces were pouring out from it. Ugh. It was such a morbid sight that I had to avert my eyes. A shiver ran down my spine and goosebumps sprang across my skin. I turned around to head back the way I came. But behind me was another cat, a black cat, a live one, staring at me with radiant golden eyes.
なんだよ。
As soon as I spoke, the cat dashed away into the shadows. For some reason I couldn't explain, I was now feeling really uncomfortable. I figured I should just get going already, but since the dead cat was in the way of my normal route, I decided to take a long way to the store. But just as I was about to head off, I realized something. The whole time I'd been hearing a strange noise coming from somewhere. Wait, so that's an actual noise. With a gulp, I started listening closely. Oh my gosh, someone's running around with a pipe.
最悪だ。
I was sitting behind the computer monitor. I chugged down a cola to quench my thirst and leaned back in my chair. That was a horrible delusion. All that talk of gory crap must have gotten to my head. Whenever something really got to me like that, I tended to have all sorts of weird delusions about it. Stuff so bad it surprised even me, and even though they were just delusions, there were still a lot of times where they genuinely affected me and how I was feeling. I hope we don't have a weird, subconscious psychopath. We're fading out of our own reality, out of our own mind, and another personality's coming out and murdering cats or something. That would be really crappy. My imagination was just too powerful for my own good. Especially in cases like these where I didn't have the full story. Whenever that happened, my mind always went wild, filling in the blanks with the worst things I could think of. Sometimes it was so terrifying that it actually made me scream. I do the same. Not so much the screaming part, but whenever there's gaps, I can't help but think of the worst possible scenarios. So if I'm expecting a friend or a family member and I don't hear from them and they don't arrive on time, I start thinking of the worst possible things that could have happened to them. And I have to control myself not to really panic. Of course, that'd be fine if I were back at my base, but if I did that in public, I'd attract all sorts of unwanted attention. Wait, look at this. Look at the advertisement on the computer screen. Programmers wanted free training, now only 500,000 yen to apply. Become a manager today. Okay. Is that a thing? Because that sounds like a horrific scam to charge 500,000 yen to apply. That would be horrific and dystopian. But is that an actual thing in Japan? Do you have to pay money to apply for roles? I can kind of see the logic of it, but it also feels like such a scam. Anyway, for an indoor person like me, at cafe was the only hangout spots I enjoyed. Being at the center of Shibuya and all, there were plenty of 3D DQN women and office drones occupying it, but since the rooms were all private, it wasn't an issue. As for the room I was in, it was the one I always reserved, room 37, located way in the back. It was pretty inconvenient to get refills, but since very few people ever reserved a room near the back, it was nice and quiet. Once or twice a week, I'd come here on my way home from school to log into my other ESO account. Neidhart was essentially a celebrity, so this is my way of just relaxing and enjoying the game. My goodness, you must have so much free time. While I did love being treated like a hero all the time, it sure did take its toll. That's why I made another avatar. This one was a female character named Leslot. I hadn't accomplished anything big with her, just mainly made her help Neidhart look even better by comparison. I played for about 3 hours to blow off some steam, and then I had some fun messing around with my guild mates while talking about hardcore dojins and other random crap. I want to make sure dojins, I think it's like they're the fan manga kind of thing, but like let's actually look at that. What? Wrong button. Dojin. Japanese term for self-published work. While the most popular being media associated with otaku, such as manga or like novels, they're often sold at various conventions or online. While dojins can feature pornographic content, many do not. That's a good clarification to make. So dojin essentially is just fan work. So it could be any form of fan work. Interesting. Shibuya 107. I wonder if that's a real place. By the time I'd left the cafe, it was already around 9 p.m. There were even more DQNs around this time of night. They'd line the streets like they owned the place, stuffing their faces with greasy hamburgers and let out the most disgusting laughter imaginable. Just looking at them made me want to puke. And what was especially bad? If you just so much as looked at them the wrong way, they'd immediately come and beat the crap out of you. Effing savages. They weren't human. They were animals, not fit for civilized society. Just throw them in the slaughterhouse or something, seriously. Well, I say that, but there was no way I could hope to ever stand up to them myself, so there's no point in trying. Regardless, it was time to get the heck out of Center Guy. There we go. This is a new one. Japanese word used here as a suffix meaning street. The word dori can also be used this way. Center Street. On my way back from that cafe, I always dropped by Mangadraka, which was a pretty close by, or Ammonite, which was a bit further off. I decided to check out Anime Night today, so I headed toward the station's south exit. Down that path, there was an instant drop in the number of DQNs. Man, Center Guy was completely utter chaos. Just walking through it brought nothing but pain and suffering. I'd never set foot there again if I could help it. I wish the whole place would just get blown to smithereens, except that cafe and Mangadrake, of course. Alright then, time to go browsing for some comics, dojins, or whatever else catches my eye. Oh yeah, that's right, the Bloodtoon Volume 5 DVD was coming out soon. Was it available for pre-order yet? If so, I definitely needed to get one nailed down. Okay. Before I knew it, found myself in an alleyway by Murayamacho, the same alley I always took back home from Animeite. I blinked a couple times to make sure I wasn't just seeing things. I took a look inside my bag, nothing inside but the usual, some textbooks and a handheld game system. I hadn't brought anything from Animeite today, strangely. Normally, I'd never leave Animeite empty-handed. Well, whatever. I let out a sigh and continued walking. Shouldn't take me more than 15 minutes to reach my base from here. I was only a short walk from the station, yet the dazzling neon lights and thick crowds had all but vanished. He has these weird, like, gaps. Like, it's almost like... part of me is just thinking, oh, it's just the narration, you know, like, not bogging us down with tons of content. But he's behaving as almost as if he has these massive gaps where he just doesn't remember what happens. And if that's the case, maybe that original pitch idea I just said about him having, like, a second personality underneath the surface is, like, there. Because, like, he walks himself to an anime store, and then the next time we see him, he's walking out, and he's like, wait, did I forget something? He looks in his bag, and he realizes he didn't buy anything. Shouldn't that have been the thought when he was in the store, not outside the store? Weird. There was an occasional passerby, usually older couples heading to love hotels, or random businessmen heading home, but aside from that, the place was deserted. Hard to believe this was still Shibuya, home of the bustling DQN-infested Central Guy. Somehow, it was already nighttime, and if that weren't enough, it was especially cloudy tonight, making it even darker than usual since the moonlight couldn't shine through. So we're back here again. I'd walked down this dirty alleyway more times than I could count. But for some reason, walking through it today, I couldn't help but feel as if I'd stepped into another world. The alleyway was the same as ever, but it felt like it was the first time I'd ever set foot in it. Okay. But we were here before with the cat, right? What's more, the stench of rotting garbage was lingering in the air. The moisture in the atmosphere was so thick that if I hadn't known any better, I'd have assumed that it had just been raining. The air was like syrup on my skin. Okay, so we are back. And is that, like, I'm not imagining that tinnitus tone, right? Like, that ringing sound. Like, I'm actually looking, and the audio is locked on, so it's there.
Yeah, ちょっと待った。
Yeah, what is that? Why did I say again? Has this happened before? Hadn't I felt this sense of Jamazvu before? Jamazvu? What is that? So, deja vu, Jamazvu. Deja vu is the feeling of having experienced something before, despite not actually having experienced it. It feels as if one's recalling a genuine past experience, as opposed to the imagining an experience or a dream. However, the individual undergoing the phenomenon is unable to recall when and where the experience occurred, which results in an intense feeling of strangeness. The cause of deja vu is yet to be determined. One theory is that the psychological phenomena caused by an extremely rare temporary desynchronization of the recollection of the storage functions of memory. The cause is theorized to be spasms in the brain, parahippocampal gyrus, which is in charge of spatial reasoning and the sensation of familiarity. There's also the opposite of deja vu, where one feels that they have not experienced something despite having experienced it in the past. This is known as Jamazvu. Jamaizvu. I've never heard of Jamaizvu, but that's interesting. So the idea that you haven't experienced something despite having done it in the past. I guess I've kind of had that where I didn't think I'd done something before, but then when I did it, like all the memories flooded back. But that's odd. And then deja vu. Deja vu is really cool. And yeah, like the what it's describing here, the spasm in the brain, the way, like, a good way to kind of break it down into layman terms is the idea that, like, your brain normally it captures information, stores it in your processes it and then stores it in your memory. But they think that there might be a aware fluctuation where your brain captures information, stores it in your memory, and then recalls it. And so, despite the fact that it's the same 3 steps, it's just the order's been switched up. And that gives you the feeling of the deja vu, where it's like you're seeing information and you're processing it actively, but you're processing it like it's a memory rather than it's a comprehension, and that's why it feels strange. Patch, I was getting my delusions mixed up with reality or something? That sounded like the kind of nonsense an expert psychiatrist would say is one of those TV talk shows. Well, whatever. The point was, right at that moment, I was feeling strange sense of Jamazvu. I hope I'm saying that right. Because deja vu, it sounds like French or Italian. And if it's French and Italian, I never can say it right, so I apologize. But on top of that, I could feel a prickling sensation on the nape of my neck, a sensation I knew very well, the feeling of being watched from the heavens. And there's the tone! Are we not going to mention the tone? As I could say for sure, it was no delusion. I felt inescapable, as if no matter where I went, that gaze would follow. There was no doubt in my mind somebody was watching me. That was just how powerful the sensation was. I desperately wanted to look behind me, but I challenged myself not to. It was a game I played every once in a while, a test. I called it the "it'll take more than that to make me turn around" game. The aim of the game, obviously, was to avoid turning around. Played it when I heard a weird sound or felt like I was being watched. Whenever I felt the gaze, I tend to imagine some kind of intensely terrifying ghost or monster lurking behind me. Not like I'd ever actually seen anything in the past 17 years, though, even on the occasions when I'd lost my patience and turned around. Still, I'd always been able to have at least a little bit of fun with it. I'd listen to the wind, raise an eyebrow suspiciously, and say the phrase ripped straight out of a manga. That was the only reason why I did it, because it was fun. Definitely not because I was scared or anything.
貴様、見ているな。その目誰の目？なんちゃって。
Okay, to be honest, I was really just trying to act calm, but before I knew it, I'd stopped dead in my tracks. I sensed a change in the atmosphere, paralyzing my body in place. Then I noticed my face was soaked with sweat and my knees were shaking. Unable to take it anymore, I turned around, which meant that I'd lost, but thankfully there was no one behind me, not even a car passing by or something. So why did I feel so uneasy? What's with the tone? I am feeling uneasy now because that tone won't go away. Probably on purpose. Oh. There, what? The ringing in my ears ceased. Okay, so that is ringing in his ears. I hadn't even realized it, but I've been hearing some ringing sound this whole time. But still, until now, I'd have been completely oblivious to it. And now that it was gone, I couldn't hear anything at all. For a place like Tokyo, this sort of sudden silence seemed completely unreal. It was the sort of perfect silence where you could hear a pin drop if you focused hard enough. So I closed my eyes and listened closely, just to see what I could hear. But I still couldn't hear anything at all. That was pretty strange. No, that was definitely strange. There were all sorts of things I should have been hearing. Trains running by, car horns in the distance, some sort of small noise. So why did I hear nothing? Was something wrong with my ears? Felt compelled to shout just so I could hear something. Felt like I might go crazy otherwise. But I couldn't do it. The silence was deafening, but it made me fear what would happen if I broke it. Uh-oh. I don't like that. Suddenly, a single sound resonates through the silent world. Oh no. I turned my head to look for the source, but instead I found a slew of shining objects scattered across the asphalt.
十字架?
Oh no. When I saw them, my body suddenly unfroze, and perhaps too naturally, I started moving toward them. Driven by curiosity, I picked up one. It was made of metal with a long pointy end like a needle. A stake or a nail, maybe? Whatever it was shaped like a cross, hence my initial confusion. It felt almost phantasmal, like it might float away at any moment. I tightened my grip on it. And then the sound continues to reverberate faintly in the distance. Sound cold enough to send chills down my spine, repeating incessantly. I thought it might be a pipe, but now I'm wondering if it's dripping blood. Even so, I couldn't help but move toward the source like I was in a trance. Was it just morbid curiosity? Or was I hoping that the noise would save me? That it would grant me salvation from the silent world? You know, this reminded me of that one German folktale. What was it called again? Oh yeah, The Pied Piper of Hamelin. A story in which the sound of one man's pipe lured over 100 children into following him. A clanging sound refused to stop, and the further I walked, the louder it got. It was coming from further down the alley. Past the corner on my left, I could already tell if I turned that corner, I'd be met with the source of that sound. And yet I never thought of turning back. Such a thought didn't even cross my mind. It was like my body was moving on its own. And so, I turned the corner, and my eyes were struck by... I wish it were a smooth criminal, but it's not. It's not. It's gonna be the guy, but somehow it's gonna be the guy in the murder scene that we saw a picture of yesterday. I know it, and that's freaking crazy. A vibrant crimson shining through the darkness. Oh my gosh, what the fetch? My first thought was, where have I seen this art piece before? My second thought was, it doesn't look very realistic. Maybe I was shocked that my brain wasn't processing things properly. Normally when I saw things this terrifying, I'd freeze, scream like a little girl, and piss my pants all at once. Yeah, don't blame you, man. Who's this chick? The work consisted of spikes arranged on a wall like quills of a hedgehog or pins on a pincushion, but when I looked closer I realized the pincushion was leaking blood. So then that meant that the petal of crimson below was the blood, the feeble glow of a streetlight just barely reaching it, causing the pool to gleam in the darkness. Scattered around were a few shiny pieces of what looked like meat. Maybe, I couldn't tell. I tried to gulp, but my throat had gone completely dry, not a single drop of saliva to be found. And then I realized... the thing that was nailed to the wall was a human corpse. A murder that was far too unnatural, far too brutal, far too immoderate. And the one who done it, the one who nailed these stakes to the wall, was a single girl. And for how I knew that? Well, she's standing right there. It was because she was right there, standing right in front of her art, holding a bunch of stakes in her blood-soaked hand. Alright, psycho, run! Run, boy! I could only see her back from here, so I obviously had no clue what she looked like. What I could tell, though, was that she was wearing a Suime Academy uniform. The stench of rotting garbage was intensifying, and I was hit with a wave after wave of nausea. I put a hand in my mouth to stop myself from vomiting, but I was nearly at my limit. And then it suddenly dawned on me, the cause of my deja vu, the answer to the question of where have I seen this before? The picture.
あの時の将軍のリンク写真。
So the picture Shogun sent, and the cat that we saw, because we heard the sound then. Without meaning to, I had said that out loud, without realizing how dangerous or even deadly that mistake could be. In response to my voice, her shoulder twitched slightly. And with that, she slowly turned to face me. Oh gosh. I didn't mention I'm not 100% recovered. Oh boy. In that moment, I was as if her gaze was piercing straight through me. Such desolate eyes. She just killed someone. Bye! At first, she seemed shocked, but her expression quickly changed to a somber smile, and then...
よかった。
What the fetch? She softly whispered those words. Thank goodness. Thank goodness for what? And what was she smiling? Why was she smiling at me? I didn't understand. The questions kept piling up to the point where it seemed to send a chill down my spine. Now panicking, I tried diverting my eyes. The first thing that came to mind was, I don't want anything to do with this. I mean, for starters, I could hardly make eye contact with regular theater girls, let alone psycho killers, and the police would be here soon. I was hungry. Wow, what a hero. That's what I should go home. Yeah, I need to get out of here as fast as humanly possible. If I don't, I'll go insane.
たく。
Oh my gosh, what? What? How do you know our name? We don't talk to people. Suddenly, she called me by name, even though I'd never told her my name, even though I'd never met her before.
あなたに会いたかった。
Oh no. As she looked at me, her lips twisted into a horrifically fearsome smile, almost like she was a demon. That was weird. Screaming at the top of my lungs, I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, but I hurt to breathe, but I didn't care. I just kept screaming and running as fast as if my life depended on it. His yell went back and forth between my headphones. I don't know if that'll translate in the recording or not. I hope it does, but it was weird. At one point along the way, I turned my head to look behind me, but she didn't seem to be chasing me. Okay, so we're just home. Alright, I think we're gonna go ahead and just end here. My throat's getting a little sore, so I'm gonna just not push it too hard. That was insane. Like, the problem we're gonna start running into is like, did that happen or not? But then if we see it in the news, and then we know it's bad, what are we supposed to do if we see her at school? Like, what are you supposed to do with this nonsense? How did she know our name? God, there's so many questions. That was utter madness. Utter madness. Oh, I guess calling me impressed with the game. I mean, it was one heck of a second episode. First episode was very, like, intro sequence and introducing character. Now we have whatever that nonsense is. Maybe we're gonna next week we'll be able to talk to Shogun, or try to talk to Shogun. Maybe that was Shogun. I don't know. What the fetch is happening? Oh my gosh. That's nuts. That's just genuinely nuts. It's a lot more brutal too. Like, Steins Gate I had a great opening with like Okabe finding Kurisu's like murdered corpse, and then doing the time change, the time leap, the world leap, the world line leap. But this is like, it's kind of in the same line, but it's such a different feel. It's really interesting. It'll be really fun to play it out and see how it all goes. But yeah, hope you all don't mind. Definitely not the longest episode, but again, kind of have my own limits. But I'd rather just get this out here and enjoy as much as we did. So thank you so much for your patience with me. Thank you so much for joining me. I imagine that future episodes will probably be a little longer than this, but I usually try and shoot for, 50 minutes, an hour anyway. So this is pretty close to that. But yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for your patience with me for the last week and a half or so. I'm looking forward to getting back to it. If you're a fan and have been following my Monday series, my Model series, I'll be doing the rap party on Monday at the usual time. I'll make a post about it. Just kind of talk about that and talk about what our next game we're going to play is on that Monday slot. It'll be really interesting. So it won't be as long because it was a much shorter game. So I still have plenty to talk about, but it's going to be much shorter than like the Grisaya rap party was. But still, it's always good to see you there. So hopefully you'll attend there live. And then other than that, like we'll just continue on with the next week's stuff. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for joining me on the channel. Hope you've enjoyed this, and like I hope you're excited for the rest of the series. I know like visual novels are always start off a little slow because it's got to introduce characters and setting and plot. So I hope you will understand, but I'm just happy to have you all here. I hope you enjoy. I look forward to reading your comments. No spoilers, obviously, but I'm excited to see what you think of my thoughts as we've gone through the game. And I guess if there's anything else I'd be curious about, it would also be about like that reverse deja vu. First of all, if I'm saying it wrong, let me know. And then secondly, have you ever experienced that? Because, like I said, the closest I've ever come to that was not thinking I'd eaten a piece like a type of food or been to a location before, and then when I get there, suddenly feeling like, oh, it is familiar, but like up until getting there, it didn't seem familiar. Like I've experienced that a bit, but I'm not sure if that's quite the same thing. So yeah, just be cool to know what your thoughts are on that. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and until next video, watching me, see me next. I'll see you there.